I'm leaving you and taking everything. Finally free. My wife declared. I calmly replied, Indeed you are. Then, her celebration became desperate bargaining. When she read the fine print, I keep 75% of all assets. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. Been lurking here for years, but never thought I'd have my own story to share, because this revenge is still warm from the oven. My name's Marcus, and I'm 43 years old. Just finalized my divorce last week, and I'm still riding the high of what might be the most satisfying karma I've ever witnessed. Some of you might think I'm an asshole by the end of this, but I honestly don't give a single fuck. Sometimes protecting yourself means being ruthless, and I've got zero regrets about how this played out. Let me set the stage properly, because understanding the money involved makes this story hit different. I own a logistics company that I started 12 years ago, with one beat-up Freightliner and more ambition than sense. Started out doing last-mile delivery for local businesses, sleeping in that truck more nights than my apartment. Now I've got 47 trucks, 2 warehouses, and contracts with 3 of the biggest retailers in the country. We're talking 8 figures annually after a good year, and the last 3 years have been very good. I met Sophia at a pool party back in 2013 when I was 31 and had just landed my first major contract with a national retailer. My buddy Tony had dragged me to this bougie resort thing, and I was uncomfortable as hell. I'm more at home around loading docks and truck stops than infinity pools and cabanas. But Tony insisted I needed to network and live a little. That's when I saw her. Picture every Instagram model you've ever scrolled past at 2 a.m. Blonde hair that caught the sunlight like spun gold. Found out later it was $400 extensions. Perfect tan that looked like she'd been dipped in honey, spray tan twice weekly, and a body that defied gravity in ways that seemed to mock physics. Those tits cost me $12,000 2 years later. She was working as a cocktail waitress at the resort, but the way she carried herself, you'd think she was a guest. I was hooked immediately, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. When a woman like that looks at you like you're the only man at the party, your brain doesn't stand a chance. She zeroed in on me like a predator who'd spotted wounded prey. Found out later from her friend that she'd asked the bartender who owned the new G-Wagon in the parking lot, and when she found out it was me, suddenly I had a personal waitress who kept bringing me drinks I hadn't ordered. She had this laugh that made you want to be funnier, just to hear it again. She'd touch my arm when I said something even remotely amusing, lean in close enough that I could smell her perfume over the chlorine from the pool. Told me how refreshing it was to meet a guy who actually worked for a living. How tired she was of all these trust fund babies who'd never earned anything themselves. Looking back now, I can see the calculated precision in every move. The way she'd mention how hard it was making ends meet on a waitress salary, then immediately change the subject like she was embarrassed. How she'd admiringly run her fingers over my watch, then talk about how material things didn't matter to her. The way she made me feel like a king while simultaneously planting seeds about all the things she deserved but couldn't afford. We started dating, and she was working 3 shifts a week at the resort, claiming she was also a fashion consultant on the side. What that meant was she had an Instagram page where she posted pictures of herself in different outfits that brands had sent her for free in exchange for exposure. But 31-year-old me thought that was entrepreneurial as hell. Building her brand, hustling, making connections. God, I was stupid. 3 months into dating, she suddenly lost her apartment. Her roommate had supposedly bailed on the lease, and she couldn't afford the rent solo. She showed up at my place with tears in her eyes and 2 suitcases, talking about how she might have to move back to Arizona with her mom, how this probably meant goodbye for us. Captain Save-A-Ho here immediately offered to let her move in. She did this whole song and dance about how she couldn't possibly impose, how that was too much to ask, but her stuff was in my closet within the hour. Here's the thing about Sophia that I didn't understand until much later. She was a professional. Her job wasn't cocktail waitressing or fashion consulting. Her job was making me feel like the most important man in the world while slowly draining my bank account. She was incredible at it too. Dinner ready when I got home even if I was late. Back rubs without being asked after long days. Sex that made me forget my own name, and thank God for the privilege. She played the perfect girlfriend role like she'd studied for it her whole life. The mask started slipping though. Little things that seemed like nothing at the time, but make perfect sense now. Like when I bought her a $2,000 Louis Vuitton purse for her birthday, and her first response was asking if they had it in a different color, or how she'd order the most expensive thing on the menu at restaurants, then take 3 bites and claim she was full. The way she'd mention things her friends' boyfriends bought them, not asking for anything directly but painting a real clear picture of expectations. My lawyer buddy Jake tried to warn me about 6 months in. We were at lunch talking about a contract dispute, and out of nowhere he goes straight for the jugular about Sophia. Told me his girlfriend had seen her at that pool party, Googling my name and net worth before she ever brought me that first drink. I defended her like an idiot, saying she was just being smart, doing her research, showing interest in my success. Jake just shook his head and told me when I inevitably proposed, because he knew I would since I was thinking with my dick, I better get an ironclad prenup. 8 months in, and I was ring shopping. Not because I'd made a rational decision about our future, but because she'd been leaving her laptop open to very specific ring pages. Subtle stuff like an $85,000 cushion cut with a platinum band bookmarked as perfect ring in her browser. The jeweler actually pulled me aside and asked if I was sure about the purchase. That should have been my wake-up call, but I was too far gone. I proposed on a beach in Maui because of course I did. Flew her whole family out there too, because she'd mentioned how meaningful it would be to have them witness our commitment. Her mom Diana, sister Carmen, and a couple cousins I'd never even heard of before. Probably dropped $50,000 on the whole production between flights, hotels, and the dinner afterwards. She said yes before I even got the full question out, snatching that ring like it might disappear if she waited. That night, Jake texted me 2 words that probably saved my life. Prenup. Tomorrow. See, Jake had watched his older brother go from owning 3 successful restaurants to living in a studio apartment and driving Uber after his divorce. His ex-wife had taken him for everything, including restaurant locations he'd spent years building. Jake made it his personal mission to save every friend from that fate, and I'll be grateful to him until the day I die. The next morning, I brought up the prenup while we were on the balcony of our suite watching the sunrise. She was admiring how the light hit her ring, tilting her hand different angles, probably calculating its resale value. I mentioned that Jake was drawing up some paperwork to protect the business, keep things clean for the company, make sure my employees were protected no matter what happened to us. The transformation was instant and terrifying. Like watching a nature documentary where the cute animal suddenly reveals it's actually a predator. The ring admiration stopped, her whole body went rigid, and she turned to look at me with eyes that could have frozen lava. She went from doing her baby voice to sounding like a completely different person, asking if I was fucking serious right now, if I was really planning our divorce the day after proposing. For 3 days in paradise, we went to war over that prenup. She tried every manipulation tactic in the playbook. Tears that would start and stop like she had a switch. Screaming matches that had other hotel guests complaining. The silent treatment where she'd walk past me like I didn't exist. Even tried to seduce me out of it, showing up in lingerie talking about how we didn't need papers between us when we had love. Her mom got involved, calling me every name in the book, saying I was treating her daughter like a prostitute, that real men don't need prenups because real men honor their commitments. Her sister posted passive-aggressive memes on Facebook about knowing your worth and red flags in relationships. The cousins I'd flown out there suddenly had opinions about how I was probably planning to cheat and wanted an easy exit strategy. But I held firm, partly because Jake was texting me every hour reminding me not to cave, partly because some primitive part of my brain recognized this reaction as a massive red flag. If we were really going to be together forever like she claimed, then the prenup wouldn't matter. It would just be paper in a filing cabinet somewhere. The only reason to fight it this hard was if she was already planning her exit. Finally, she agreed to sign if I made some concessions. We flew back home and met with lawyers. Hers cost me $3,500 because of course I paid for her representation too. Can't have her claiming later that she didn't have adequate counsel. The prenup ended up being more generous than Jake wanted but was still bulletproof. If she initiated divorce without cause like infidelity or abuse on my part, I'd keep 80% of marital assets and all business interests. She'd get 20% of marital assets accumulated during the marriage, plus her personal belongings. No alimony if she initiated. If I initiated without cause, it would be a standard 50-50 split. Her lawyer actually told her it was more than fair for someone bringing no assets to the marriage. She signed it with the same enthusiasm you'd sign your own death warrant. Her mom in the corner muttering about how prenups get thrown out all the time, how judges don't honor them anymore, how I'd regret this when she found a better lawyer someday. Should have been my cue to run, but the wedding was planned, deposits paid, and I was still convinced I was in love. The first year of marriage was actually decent. She quit her cocktail waitressing job immediately, saying it was embarrassing for a company owner's wife to be serving drinks to people we might know socially. I didn't fight it because honestly, I kind of agreed. She threw herself into being a housewife, learned to cook from YouTube channels, kept our place looking like something out of Architectural Digest, always looked perfect when I got home, hair done, makeup fresh, wearing something that showed just enough skin to remind me why I'd married her. But as the business grew and the money flowed, her appetite became insatiable. Year one, she needed a new car because her Honda Civic was embarrassing at the country club she joined without discussing it with me. I bought her a BMW 5 Series, thinking that would satisfy her. Year two, she needed a personal trainer because all the other wives had one and didn't I want her to look good for me? $400 per session, 5 days a week. Year three was a complete wardrobe overhaul because she needed to dress like the wife of a successful businessman, not some college girl. Every request was framed as being for my benefit, for our image as a couple, for the success of my business. She'd research exactly how much other executives' wives spent on appearance and present it to me like a business proposal. The genius of it was making me feel cheap if I said no, like I was holding her back from being the partner I deserved. By year five, she was unrecognizable from the cocktail waitress I'd met. Monthly Botox appointments, quarterly filler injections, hair extensions that cost more than most people's rent, nails done weekly, spray tans, veneered teeth, a nutritionist, a style consultant, a life coach. She looked like she'd been assembled in a factory that built trophy wives. The total monthly maintenance cost on my wife was more than I paid 3 of my drivers. Her daily routine had evolved into a parody of wealth. 9 a.m. Pilates with her personal trainer, 11 a.m. brunch with the girls, where they discuss their husbands' inadequacies, 1 p.m. shopping where dropping $30,000 was a casual Tuesday, 3 p.m. spa treatment because shopping is exhausting, 5 p.m. getting ready for whatever evening event she'd committed us to without asking. She started a lifestyle blog called Living Lux with Sophia that posted maybe 4 times a year, but she had business cards made calling herself CEO and founder. She'd spend hours staging photos of herself with products she'd bought with my money, writing captions about curating a life of intentional luxury and elevating everyday moments into experiences. The irony of calling yourself an entrepreneur when your business model is spending someone else's money was completely lost on her. Her friend group was like a coven of gold diggers, led by this toxic creature named Madison, who was married to some pharmaceutical executive. These women would get together and literally compare notes on extraction techniques. I'd overhear conversations that made my skin crawl about training husbands like dogs, withholding sex for better gifts, and planning exit strategies for maximum profit. They had a whole vocabulary for it too, referring to their husbands as investors and divorce as cashing out. Madison was the worst influence possible, constantly filling Sophia's head with poison about how she deserved more, how she was settling, how her beauty was a depreciating asset that she needed to maximize before it faded. She had Sophia convinced that being a trophy wife was actually harder than having a real job because you had to be on all the time, had to manage your appearance like a brand, had to navigate the complex social dynamics of wealth. I was working 70-hour weeks building an empire while she was strategizing about which charity board would give her the most social capital for the least actual work. But I ignored the warning signs because the sex was still good, the house ran smoothly, and having a beautiful wife on my arm at business events didn't hurt my image. Last year, things got weird, though. Started with small inconsistencies that didn't add up. She'd say she was at her mom's for the weekend, but her mom would call asking if we'd seen her. Charges on the credit cards for flights when she was supposedly driving somewhere. Restaurant bills for 2 people when she was allegedly eating alone. My gut told me she was cheating, but something felt off about that theory, too. So I hired a private investigator, former cop named Rodriguez, who came highly recommended from a client who'd gone through an ugly divorce. Told him I just needed to know what my wife was doing with her time, that something wasn't adding up, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Best $10,000 I ever spent. 2 weeks later, Rodriguez called, saying we needed to meet immediately, and I should bring my lawyer. My stomach dropped, thinking he'd found evidence of an affair. The reality was so much worse and so much better at the same time. Rodriguez had a thick folder of evidence laid out like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Bank statements, photos, text messages, receipts, a whole parallel life documented in devastating detail. But she wasn't cheating in the traditional sense. She was planning something much more calculated. For over a year, Sophia had been systematically preparing her exit strategy. She'd opened multiple bank accounts under her maiden name at different banks, structuring deposits to avoid reporting requirements. She'd been siphoning money out of our joint accounts through a dozen different methods. Cash back at grocery stores that went into her pocket, buying expensive items with our credit cards, then returning them for cash, selling jewelry I'd bought her and keeping the money, even skimming from the cash she'd have me give her for tips and incidentals. The real shock was the condo downtown. She'd rented a fully furnished luxury unit under her maiden name, paying for it with the stolen money. She called it her single girl pad in text to Madison, discussing how she was decorating it for her new life after she cashed out from our marriage. She'd been moving clothes and belongings there slowly, building a whole separate existence while sleeping next to me every night. Rodriguez had text messages between her and Madison that made me sick. Discussions about timing the divorce for maximum financial benefit, strategies for hiding assets, research on which lawyers were best at breaking prenups. Madison sharing how she was doing the same thing, how they'd be divorce twins, living their best lives with their ex-husband's money. Jake looked at the evidence with the eye of a lawyer who'd seen everything. His assessment was brutal and beautiful. This wasn't just marital discord or assets disagreement. This was theft, fraud, and systematic financial abuse. The prenup had specific clauses about financial malfeasance that would trigger forfeiture of all marital assets. She'd basically been building a case against herself for over a year. The smart play was to wait and let her hang herself further. So for 6 months, I played dumb while documenting everything, kept funding her lifestyle, kept smiling when she kissed me goodbye for her girls' trips that were really her setting up her new life. Every receipt, every lie, every stolen penny went into a file that got thicker by the day. The hardest part was acting normal while knowing what I knew. Listening to her complain about feeling trapped in our marriage while she was literally furnishing an escape condo with my money. Hearing her tell friends on the phone how controlling I was with finances while she was stealing from me daily. Watching her play the victim while victimizing me with surgical precision. 3 weeks ago was the Children's Hospital Charity Gala, one of those $1,000-a-plate affairs where rich people compete to see who can be most publicly generous. Sophia loved these events because they gave her a chance to peacock in whatever designer creation she'd bought that week. This particular night, she was wearing a $45,000 Marchesa gown that she'd assured me was an investment because she could wear it to multiple events. She was dripping in diamonds, too. Probably $200,000 worth of jewelry on her body. My money transformed into her armor. The champagne was flowing, though she'd switched to wine after 3 glasses, and she had that glassy-eyed look that meant she was about to make a scene. I'd seen it before at other events, where she'd pick fights with other wives or make cutting remarks disguised as jokes. We were at a table with the usual suspects from our social circle. Madison and her husband Brad, the Wintertons from the club, some business associates of mine trying to pretend they were having fun. Everyone doing that fake laugh, fake compliment dance that passes for conversation at these things. Sophia kept shooting me looks across the table, this weird combination of contempt and excitement that I'd never seen before. Then she stood up, tapping her wedding ring against her wine glass like she was about to give a toast. The conversation died as everyone turned to look at her. Other tables nearby noticed the gesture and quieted down too, probably expecting some saccharine speech about charitable giving or grateful wives. Instead, she dropped a nuclear bomb on my life with a smile on her face. She announced to approximately 50 people in our immediate vicinity that we were getting divorced. But she didn't just say it, she performed it. Made a whole speech about finally being free to live her authentic life, about escaping emotional imprisonment, about claiming her independence. She used air quotes around the word marriage and actually laughed while delivering this monologue. Madison started slow clapping like this was some feminist breakthrough moment. Other wives at the table looked like they'd swallowed lemons. The men just stared at their plates except for Brad, who was shooting me sympathy looks. One of my business associates actually got up and left rather than deal with the awkwardness. I sat there calm as a Hindu cow, took a sip of my water, and stood up. Put my hand gently on her back like a supportive husband would. Looked her dead in the eyes and said loud enough for everyone to hear that whatever made her happy was fine with me, that I wanted nothing but the best for her in her journey to freedom. The laugh died on her lips like I'd slapped her. She'd expected tears, begging, anger, a scene that would paint her as the victim fleeing an emotional tyrant. Instead, she got calm acceptance that made her look like exactly what she was, a cruel person publicly humiliating someone who'd given her everything. The rest of the dinner was excruciating. People trying to make small talk while avoiding the elephant in the room. Sophia sitting there fuming, occasionally muttering about what a cold bastard I was. Madison whispering in her ear, probably strategizing damage control. Other couples excusing themselves early with transparent excuses about babysitters and early meetings. In the car ride home, she exploded, demanding to know why I hadn't reacted properly, why I wasn't fighting for our marriage, why I was being such a robot about everything. I calmly explained that she'd announced our divorce to a room full of people, and I was simply respecting her decision. This made her even angrier, screeching about how I was supposed to fight for her, how real men don't just give up, how this proved I'd never really loved her. She slammed into the guest room that night after dragging 3 suitcases worth of clothes and toiletries with her, making sure to bang every door and drawer possible. I exported the Ring doorbell footage of her dramatically leaving at 2 in the morning, mascara running down her face as she loaded her Mercedes with luggage. Sent it to Jake with a subject line that simply said, "Showtime." The next morning, I was up at 5 a.m. like always, hit the gym, showered, and was in the office by 7. Before leaving the house, I carefully packed all her remaining belongings into boxes, taking photos of every item for documentation. 37 boxes total, including enough shoes to stock a small boutique and handbags that could pay for a car. I even bubble wrapped her collection of designer sunglasses, each pair labeled with the receipt showing what I'd paid for it. By 9 a.m., Jake had filed our response and gotten emergency orders to freeze all joint accounts per the prenup terms. By noon, Sophia had hired Bradley Whitman, one of those billboard lawyers who promises to fight for what you deserve. His opening demand letter was so absurd, Jake actually had it framed for his office. The demands included 50% of all assets personal and business, our 6-bedroom house, lifetime alimony of $45,000 per month, both Mercedes vehicles, continuation of all credit cards and shopping accounts, and a $2 million lump sum for emotional damages caused by my financial abuse during the marriage. Jake's response was a masterclass in legal brevity, simply directing Mr. Whitman to review the prenuptial agreement sections 3.2 through 3.7 and submit a revised proposal that acknowledged the binding terms both parties had agreed to. That's when Sophia's world started crumbling and the real fireworks began. My phone became a battlefield of missed calls and increasingly unhinged text messages. After the 15th text calling me various names and making wild threats, I blocked her number and directed all communication through counsel. Her mother, Diana, called next, 61 years old, and a bigger gold digger than her daughter, screaming about how prenups weren't worth the paper they were printed on, how I was leaving her baby destitute, how she'd make sure everyone knew what kind of monster I was. When I calmly explained that Sophia would receive approximately $2.8 million under the prenup terms, hardly destitute by any measure, Diana actually said that wasn't enough to maintain the lifestyle her daughter deserved. Then came the flying monkeys, as Jake called them. Madison calling to mediate while really just fishing for information about my strategy. Carmen, Sophia's sister, leaving tearful voicemails about family values and second chances. Random wives from the country club texting about how disappointed they were in my behavior. Even the woman who did Sophia's hair called to say she couldn't believe I was being so cruel. But the real escalation came when Bradley Whitman actually read the prenup and had to explain reality to his client. Jake was able to get his paralegal to give us the play-by-play of that meeting. Apparently, Sophia threw a paperweight through Whitman's office window when he explained that the prenup was ironclad and her behavior at the gala constituted initiation of divorce proceedings without cause. Week 2 was when they pulled out all the stops and went full scorched earth. Someone called my biggest client claiming I was mentally unstable and they should reconsider our contract. Fortunately, I'd been working with them for 8 years, and they called me directly to laugh about it. Then came the social media assault with Sophia posting videos about surviving financial abuse and escaping a narcissist, complete with crying selfies and inspirational quotes about knowing your worth. She attempted to transfer $140,000 from our investment account, not realizing I'd already frozen everything. The bank manager actually called me personally to laugh about someone trying to empty a legally frozen account. Then she showed up at my office with Diana, Madison, and Carmen, like some kind of intervention brigade, screaming about ownership and rights until security had to escort them out while my assistant filmed everything for evidence. The false reports started rolling in like a coordinated attack. The health department received anonymous tips about safety violations at my warehouses. The IRS got reports of tax evasion. Adult Protective Services was told I was abusing Diana, who lived 3 states away and hadn't seen me in years. The Better Business Bureau got complaints from customers we'd never had about services we didn't provide. Each one required time and money to address. Each one got documented. Each one added to our growing countersuit for harassment. But week 3 was when everything went nuclear. Bradley Whitman finally got the forensic accounting report, showing the systematic theft of $380,000 over 2 years. But worse than the theft was the tax fraud. Sophia had been claiming her shopping as business expenses for her joke of a blog, writing off Hermes bags as content creation materials and spa treatments as business meetings. 3 years of fraudulent returns that put her in federal offense territory. Jake set up a meeting with Whitman to discuss the findings. Just lawyers, no clients, and Jake recorded the whole thing legally. Whitman walked in looking like he'd aged a decade in 3 weeks, slumping into his chair like a defeated man. The conversation was brief and brutal. Sophia could either walk away with nothing, and we'd handle the theft internally, or we'd pursue criminal charges and turn everything over to the IRS. Whitman left that meeting and drove straight to Sophia's secret condo. According to the doorman who Rodriguez had befriended, there was screaming for 2 hours, followed by Whitman leaving, looking like he'd gone 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. That night, the begging began in earnest. First, Diana called, actually crying real tears for once, pleading for mercy, saying Sophia had made mistakes but didn't deserve to have her life destroyed. When I pointed out that Sophia had destroyed her own life through theft and fraud, Diana tried negotiating, asking what it would take to make this all go away. Then Madison's husband, Brad, called trying to broker a deal, eventually admitting that Madison had been doing the same tax fraud, and they were worried about scrutiny spreading to the whole friend group. Finally, last week, Sophia called from a blocked number. Jake had approved one conversation if I recorded it. The confident woman who'd laughed while announcing our divorce was gone, replaced by someone desperate and broken. She sobbed through apologies, blaming Madison for the influence, claiming she never meant any of it, begging me to call off the IRS. She actually said she was on her knees, that she'd do anything, that she'd sign whatever I wanted and disappear forever if I just showed mercy. I reminded her that she'd wanted freedom, that she'd announced it laughingly to 50 people, that she'd stolen from me and tried to destroy my business. Her response was more sobbing and begging until I finally ended the call. The divorce was finalized yesterday in what Jake claims was the fastest resolution he'd ever seen. When someone's looking at federal charges, they tend to sign papers quickly. The final settlement was exactly what the prenup dictated for theft and fraud. Nothing. No money, no assets, no alimony, no claims to anything. She even had to pay her own legal fees. In exchange, we didn't pursue the theft charges criminally, though the IRS situation remains her problem to solve. The poetic justice is almost Shakespearean in its perfection. The secret condo she'd been paying for with stolen money became evidence in the tax investigation, and she was evicted last week. The Mercedes she drove was leased in my company's name and got repossessed 2 days after the divorce finalized. All her credit cards were canceled. Her designer wardrobe, purchased with stolen funds, is subject to seizure by the IRS. As of today, based on what I'm hearing through various sources, Sophia is living with her mother in a 2-bedroom apartment in a decidedly non-luxury complex. She's working at Nordstrom in the handbag department, which feels like the universe has a sense of humor. Taking the bus to work because she can't afford a car. Madison won't return her calls because she's too busy dealing with her own IRS audit. The entire friend group has ghosted her like she has a contagious disease. She owes approximately $200,000 in back taxes and penalties, has no savings, no assets, and no rich husband to pay for everything. Her Instagram is deleted, her lifestyle blog is gone, and the woman who spent $30,000 on a random Tuesday now makes $12 an hour plus commission selling purses she can't afford to women living the life she used to have. Someone sent me a photo last night from an unknown number. It showed Sophia at work in her Nordstrom uniform, looking dead inside while ringing up a $5,000 handbag for a customer. The message simply said, "Thought you'd want to see what freedom looks like from a satisfied customer." I don't know who sent it, but I'm having it framed for my office. As for me, life has never been better. The business is booming with those contracts she tried to sabotage, all renewed for multiple years. I'm dating a veterinarian who thinks spending more than $50 on a purse is insane and considers Olive Garden fancy dining. We're planning a camping trip next month, something Sophia called disgusting poor people activities when I suggested it once. Turns out when you remove a parasite, everything in your life gets healthier. To all the men reading this, let me be crystal clear about something. Get the prenup. I don't care if she cries for a week. I don't care if her mother calls you Satan himself. I don't care if she threatens to leave you at the altar. If she won't sign it, she doesn't love you, she loves your wallet. And if she truly loves you, signing a piece of paper that says she won't take your shit if she decides to leave shouldn't be a problem. To Sophia, if you're reading this from your mom's apartment on the $70 Android phone you had to finance, I want you to know something. You got exactly what you wanted. You're free. Free from the emotional imprisonment of our marriage. Free from the golden cage you claimed I kept you in. Free to live your authentic life without my money enabling it. Free to take public transportation. Free to work retail. Free to explain to the IRS where all that money went. Every time you clock in for your shift, remember that you announced our divorce while laughing. Every time you take the bus, remember that you chose this. Every time you sell a handbag that costs more than your monthly rent, remember what you had and what you threw away. Every single day for the rest of your life, you get to live with the consequences of your choices. That's what real freedom looks like. Karma isn't just a bitch. Sometimes karma is a 43-year-old man with a good lawyer and a prenup who gave you exactly what you asked for.